Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Monday, August 28th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 5 days. The game against Michigan in 89 days. The start of the college football season, week 0, is, I guess, minus 2 days. It happened on Saturday, and man, oh man, was it fun to have college football back, even with a very limited number of games, and ESPN in primetime televising UMass and New Mexico State. It was still a really fun day full of all the nonsense you've come to expect with college football. And speaking of nonsense you've come to expect, Tony Gerdeman, my guest today. Tony, I don't know about you, but I had a bunch of stuff I had to do Saturday morning and early afternoon, and then when it was done, I just kind of plopped down on the couch and just soaked in all of the college football weirdness and fun, and wow, I've never seen that before, and you had a ref getting hit in the face with a football, and you had a quarterback getting his helmet turned all the way around and still throwing a pass. It was just everything you possibly could have hoped from week 0 of college football.
Yeah, and I'm one of the 7 people with the Pac-12 network, so I got to watch USC and San Jose State as well, so that was even more of a bonus. Somebody posted on our message board a throw of the year already from Caleb Williams, and it was fumbles a snap, picks it up, and throws it deep for a long gain touchdown, I think. And yet that you already mentioned, Tom, the 2 best passes of the weekend. The one that went really hard off the face of a ref. No offense to the ref. You never want to see that happen, but it was a crazy play. And then a quarterback getting his face mask turned and his helmet turned all the way around and still scrambling to throw the ball. I don't know who he was throwing it at. I don't know if this is just one of those reactions, with the chicken still running after you cut their head off, or the snakes that will still bite after they're dead. You just turn the helmet around of a quarterback, but that won't kill him. He's still going to throw it. Just imagine what Jake Plummer could have done with something like that.
Oh, man. Topical references. We are in mid-season form. All right. And, I think my favorite moment was on Twitter, which doesn't happen much these days, but the pregame photo of Don Brown in the locker room for UMass, where he looked like he was absolutely possessed and on fire, and people were photoshopping, laser eyes onto him. And then UMass comes out and hangs 41 points and wins a season opener against an FBS team for the first time since 1984. And man, if we had gotten a Hawaii win late night against Vanderbilt, which we almost got, and Nathan Rourke for Ohio University had stayed healthy and they had beaten San Diego State, it would have been pretty much a perfect college football Saturday. But it was a college football Saturday, and it was just a small sampling. It was like the waiters coming around with the hors d'oeuvres on the tray, oh, here were some bacon-wrapped scallops. Guess what, Tony? Next week, we're getting steak. Steak is coming on Saturday. It is Ohio State. It is Indiana. And then we get a whole bunch of other games that day. We get Florida State, LSU coming up. This is going to be a great, great week 1 of college football. But before we get to that week, we got to talk about who's going to be playing for Ohio State in that game at Indiana coming up on Saturday. You have been tracking sort of a 2 deep for Ohio State going all the way back to January 2nd. That was the first. It was version 1.0 of the tracking the Ohio State 2 deep. So I wanted to kind of wrap up the off season as we head into game week now with where things stand, because there are still some positions we got to talk about. Some spots I think we're going to kind of breeze through. Some spots we're going to be talking a little bit more. I guess we got to start with quarterback. I guess this is going to be a little bit longer. All right, let's get it. Final predictions. Quarterback for Ohio State this weekend as they step out on the field in Bloomington.
I'm going to say Kyle McCord. I've had more people tell me Kyle McCord than Devin Brown. And at this point, I guess I'm just going to have to stick with the guy I've been picking since, I think, January 2nd. And until I hear anything different, then I'm going to say Kyle McCord. But as I've said before, I'm not going to be shocked by either guy because both guys are quarterbacks at Ohio State, so they should be capable of starting.
Yeah, it does feel like you had a bunch of people kind of making the push for Devin Brown at one point this fall, and now it's maybe the pendulum swinging a little bit back towards McCord. I think, I've used this analogy before, but Alex Gleitman will talk about, there's smoke about different things about recruits, and, I don't have reason to change my pick off of fill-in-the-blank school in terms of recruiting yet, and that's kind of how I've been with McCord all summer. I'm with you. I would not be shocked if it's Devin Brown. I would not be shocked if it's Devin Brown in week 4 against Notre Dame, but I do think it's going to be Kyle McCord to start. And obviously would not be shocked if it's Kyle McCord all year long. So we will keep an eye on that. Running back, back in January, you had Travion Henderson or Mayan Williams as the number one running back. It feels like we have a little bit more of a clear stratification there now.
Yeah, and I always go back to the fact that when Travion Henderson is healthy and Mayan Williams is healthy, it's been Travion Henderson out there. And when Ryan Day was talking about his running backs the other day, he started with Travion Henderson and then basically did the Gilligan's Isle and the rest for all of the other running backs. So if that doesn't give you a little bit of a hint, but I think I've taken that Orr off. I've put it on, I think maybe 5 or 6 times over the course of the past 9 months or so. But I will say, I don't think it's a wide gap. I think it's one guy gets 16 carries, the other guy gets 12, something like that. And sometimes Mayan Williams will have more carries than Travion Henderson because they're going to ride the hot hand. But I think generally you're going to see Travion Henderson get that shot first.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it does feel like they're going to spread the carries around because they want to keep those guys fresh. If you want to keep, if a healthy Travion Henderson is your best option, the best way to keep Travion Henderson healthy is to not run him into the ground early in the season or even in the middle of the season. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think it is Travion Henderson first and then Mayan Williams after that. Wide receiver feels like you've had kind of a top 3 all year that we all sort of knew, okay, unless something really crazy happens, it's going to be these 3 guys. It feels like we kind of still know who the starting wide receivers are going to be this weekend.
Yeah, I would be pretty surprised if it's not Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison, and then Julian Fleming at Z, Harrison obviously at X, and Emeka Egbuka in the slot at H. But they're going to move around. This is where Ryan Hartline on the offense will move guys around, trying to find matchups that they like and trying to probably get Marvin Harrison out of that double coverage that he's going to be facing quite a bit. I know a lot of people are interested in seeing Carnell Tate. I would say you're going to see him, but I think those are the top 3. I have no reason to come off of those 3, but I do think they will rotate more than they did last year, but I also said they would rotate more last year than they did, so...
Yeah, it feels like every year, before Hartline was really in charge, they would rotate 6 guys frequently, and 6 guys would get a ton of snaps. And it feels like that rotation has gotten shallower since that has been Brian Hartline's room, even though the depth of talent in there is probably better than it was before it was Brian Hartline's room. But yeah, I think you're probably, the top 3 is pretty much unquestionable, and then the big question is, okay, who, Xavier Johnson or Carnell Tate or Jaden Ballard or whoever, who's gonna be able to work their way into that rotation as the season moves along. Next up was offensive line, and this was the place where I looked at your initial post and I went, oh boy, this was a while ago, because you had projected starter at center Luke Whippler. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess Luke Whippler will not be starting for the Buckeyes this weekend. That was a move that caught Tony by surprise, caught me by surprise, caught the Ohio State coaching staff by surprise. So just to give you an idea how long ago this was, the offensive lineman who was sort of a big question, will this guy return or won't this guy, was Matt Jones. Matt Jones is back, Luke Whippler is not. And then the other thing that was kind of a monkey wrench into all of that, because that was one of the spots where the projected one from January 2nd looks not very much like what the line is going to look like this weekend. The other monkey wrench in there was you added Josh Simmons from San Diego State, and that was obviously not someone you were going to be projecting to start for Ohio State back on January 2nd. How do you think the line looks now? It feels like after months and months of, well, it could be this guy, it could be that guy, and an initial depth chart that had about 6 guys as it could be this guy or this guy or this guy or this guy at guard. It feels like now we have a pretty good sense who that 5 is going to be. Yeah,
and we haven't talked to Ryan Day in about a week, but he did say left tackle will be Josh Simmons, right tackle will be Josh Fryer, left guard Donovan Jackson, right guard Matt Jones, and center is really the one thing that is up in the air, although I'd put it 65-35 Carson Hinsman over Victor Cutler, the transfer from Louisiana Monroe. But I am interested to see what Day has to say on Tuesday about that. And has Cutler made a serious move to overtake Hinsman? But I'm still going to go with Hinsman, which I think has probably been the case since the spring.
And I would probably be even stronger on Hinsman than 65-35, just because it's really been Hinsman with the ones pretty much the whole time. There've been other guys who've been in the mix, but I don't know that we've seen anyone else taking a bunch of meaningful reps with the ones when we've seen it, and we haven't really heard a lot about that. So I would be fairly surprised if it wasn't Hinsman, but certainly a possibility. Definitely not a case closed thing there at center. Another spot where there's a little bit of intrigue is at tight end. Cade Stover, obviously tight end 1. And then behind him, Joe Royer missed some time, but he's back now. G. Scott seems like he's coming along and is developed in some ways, but is he completely as well-rounded as they want him to be to be the second tight end if they're in that 12 personnel? What do you see with the tight ends?
Yeah, I do wonder whether either Royer or G. Scott can be in there in 12 personnel. I want to see if those two guys can be on the field together without Cade Stover. That's when you'll know they feel good about where they are. And Keenan Bailey, when we talked to him this summer, has been adamant that Cade Stover can't play as many snaps as he did last year. It was way too many for one guy. So I think you'll see you'll know how confident they are in the guys if they're in 12 personnel and it's Joe Royer and G. Scott out there and Cade Stover's on the sideline watching. But I don't know. I'm going to have to put an or on those two, Tom. That's the best way to get out of answering a question, because I do think you'll see all three out there.
And the funny thing is, I'm just looking now at the depth chart from January 2nd, and it's Cade Stover and then Joe Royer or G. Scott. So 9 months of interviews and practices, and information getting slid to you, and here we are at exactly the same spot we were 9 months ago. So that's all right. We'll find out more on Saturday, I guess. Defensive side of the ball, defensive end. This is another spot where I don't think this is a real big surprise. I think you've got maybe the order in which some of the twos might be ordered is a little different than we might have expected on January 2nd. But the ones at defensive end, that's not a lot of drama there.
Yeah, I think that's JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. You hear a lot of people talking about Kenyatta Jackson being part of that top 3, and I would agree I would agree he would be in the part of that top 3, but it sounds like it's more of a top 4 at this point. And I do wonder what those snaps will look like. How many more snaps does Jackson get than Caden Curry, perhaps? But it's a top 2, and then the other 2 in Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry. I wonder if they can get to a point where they just have 4 starting defensive ends. But I think there's a line between Sawyer and Tuimoloau, and then Jackson and Curry. I will say the next start that Jack Sawyer has will be the first in his career, which is kind of crazy to think about heading into his junior year, but they've had some defensive ends at Ohio State. Who knew? That's
interesting. I didn't even realize that. That is a fun little factoid there. And we've spent so much time talking about him being a defensive end and not the jack, and what's that going to look like this year. That's something that it sounds like Larry Johnson is a big supporter of that, and thinks that's going to make a big difference for Jack Sawyer. So we will see on the field what that looks like in just a few days. Interior of the defensive line, I think the fact that there is really not much of a change from January till now, other than the addition of Tywone Malone from Ole Miss, the fact that you've got the same 3 guys kind of at the top of the list in those 2 interior spots as you would have a few months ago, that feels like real good news, because that means guys are healthy. Guys, you have Mike Hall coming into this year ready to go, seemingly at pretty much full speed as far as we're aware and as far as anyone has said. So I think that probably counts as pretty good news for Ohio State on the inside of that defensive line.
Yeah, and the rotation will be, I think, quite abundant there, because you can't ask those guys to play 50 or 60 snaps. And so you got Mike Hall, you got Ty Hamilton sharing that nose tackle spot, and then you'll also have Mike Hall sharing, I think, the 3-tech with Tyleik Williams. But the Tywone Malone thing coming in has been huge to build up that depth, and you're not relying on the 3 freshmen that you brought in, or redshirt freshman Hero Kanu, who's going to get better and better and better. But I think they needed a guy that could fit into a rotation, because I'm not sure how many of those young guys are ready for the rotation right now. And I don't think 3 guys isn't enough for defensive tackle rotation, even though I do expect we'll see some defensive ends playing on the inside on passing down. Jim Knowles even mentioned Caden Curry being one of those guys last week when we talked to him.
Yeah, the return of the Rushman package will be interesting. I'm sure. How many years have we heard the interior guys say, well, we want to be 4 down players, we want to, or 3 down players. You want, Mike Hall, I'm sure, wants to be in there rushing the passer as well. So if an edge guy can get in there, a younger edge guy can get in there, that's probably a pretty good indication that they are developing that talent at the edge spots pretty well, because there's some talent on the inside of that line as well in terms of rushing the passer. There's some talent at linebacker as well, and this is another spot where the 2 starting spots, we didn't see a lot of the 2 starting guys this spring. But man, Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers, no real reason to move off of the predictions there. Cody Simon, I mean, very solidly number 3. This feels like a spot where we've gone from January to now, and really, other than maybe someone sliding down to Jack, it feels like this is a pretty status quo kind of position group.
Yeah, it is, despite what a lot of Buckeye fans are hoping will happen with C.J. Hicks. You've got an established starter at will in Steel Chambers, and obviously a preseason All-American in Tommy Eichenberg at middle linebacker. Like, that is perhaps one of the easiest spots, one of the easiest position groups on the Ohio State defense to just say, yeah, those are the 2 guys. That's it. Cody Simon can play on short yardage stuff as a 3-down guy. He can substitute for Tommy Eichenberg. I think they would like to do some of that with the idea that this is going to be a long season, and they don't want to get Tommy Eichenberg beaten up too much. They're going to have to commit overall on all of these positions, which will help C.J. Hicks in terms of committing to substituting guys during the game, and not just in the fourth quarter, but maybe giving a guy a breather for a couple of snaps here and there, and just really commit to it, and then see how well that helps them in November, December, January.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think back to like the Jim Tressel era, and there would be the drive in the second quarter where the whole second string offensive line would come in, and you wonder if maybe they could do something like that. Is there a drive where the backup linebackers come in the second quarter? Because when you're playing Indiana, when you're playing Youngstown State, when you're playing Rutgers, you could probably get away with that, and maybe that becomes something you feel comfortable doing at other times during the season as well. One spot where they feel much more comfortable than they did a year ago is corner. And last year, the cornerback room was just absolutely destroyed by injuries. I think they started 5 different guys at corner at one point or another last year. This year, that's sort of paying off. You've got depth there. They've added Davis and Igbinosun through the transfer portal. That feels like a spot where a year ago, that was viewed as one of the weak spots on the defense just because they were so thin there. Now, this might be one of the strengths.
Yeah, I think it will be, and I know there's probably people in wait and see mode regarding Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock, but those guys are healthy. Hancock hasn't been healthy his entire time at Ohio State, but is now, and so the expectation is those 2 guys will be really, really good. Hancock perhaps doing some nickel work on maybe 3rd and longs or long down situations. Davis and Igbinosun, freshman All-American at Ole Miss, and has really stepped in and impressed everybody since he's arrived. A big, 6'2", 190-pound corner, long, and I think overall they feel really good about those guys. And we overlooked Jair Brown, who got a ton of really good experience last year as a true freshman unexpectedly. And they also love their true freshmen. So it's getting back to a position of strength, although they may end up losing Burke and Hancock after this year. And then it's like, well, it's a good thing you continue to build because you're going to need it pretty soon.
Yeah, being a position where Ohio State will lose guys after 3 years or 4 years with pretty decent frequency, that's a spot where, you're going to have to keep turning that room over, and it's a little bit of a developmental spot where, Burke started as a true freshman. That's not a position you want to throw guys into. So keeping that pipeline full is going to be important, and they have done a really good job, especially since Tim Walton's been there, of keeping that pipeline full of talent. Another 3 talented corners currently committed for the 2024 class. Last spot that we wanted to get to was safety. Safety is one of those positions on the field where you look at that January 2nd one, it's like, oh boy, things have changed since January 2nd. The biggest thing I think that's changed is the addition of Jihad Carter, the transfer from Syracuse. He's going to fit in there somewhere. Feels like it was going to be the adjuster free safety, kind of deep safety spot. That's sort of what it was looking at like for a chunk of time during camp. Where do you think they end up? Who are the starting three and who's starting where?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jihad Carter as the adjuster, the free safety. We saw him, every time we saw him, that's where he was. He was the number one. Jim Knowles said last week that it's between him and Josh Proctor, the sixth-year safety, and true freshman Malik Hartford. I won't be surprised, as I said before, if Hartford ends up starting at some point this year, perhaps a spot start, something like that. But I think they're going to go with the experienced 3-year starter from Syracuse rather than the experienced 6th-year guy from Oklahoma and Josh Proctor. So I think that's your free safety. And then, of course, Lathan Ransom, I think he's one of the two guys that you can put in ink at safety. He'll be the boundary guy, the bandit safety. And then nickel, Sonny Styles, which Jim Knowles cannot say enough good things about how much he has solidified his position, the things he can do. I do think it's going to be interesting to see what happens on those long passing downs, long down and distance. Is this one of those things where, yes, Sonny Styles is the nickel, but on 3rd and 16, Jordan Hancock moves over, Davison Igbinosun comes in, maybe somebody else leaves, and then Sonny Styles becomes a pass rusher. Like the things that they will be able to do with Sonny Styles from point A to point B, rushing, covering deep, covering man. It's going to be fun to watch, and offenses are going to have to find him. They're going to have to pay attention to him.
Yeah, it feels like, normally you get the center, looking up and pointing out the mic, the middle linebacker. It feels like you might have the guy at center looking up and pointing at Sonny Styles. Look at, where's that dude? Got to know where he is at all times, because you never know what he's going to do. Jim Knowles has talked about him as a secret weapon or a jack of all trades, and the Swiss Army knife. So he is going to be definitely someone to watch. Real quickly on the special teams front, long snapper, it's going to be John Furlman, the transfer from Arizona State. Punter, it's going to be Jesse Mirko, the transfer from the nation of Australia. And kicker, Tony, this is the one spot where I really don't know that anyone has a feel for it, because Ryan Day referred us to Parker Fleming. Parker Fleming referred us to, I don't know, we'll all find out together in Bloomington. It feels like it's a battle between Parker Lewis, the transfer from USC, and Jaden Fielding, who handled kickoffs for Ohio State last year. Go ahead, flip a coin. Tell us, Tony, who is going to be the starting kicker for Ohio State on the first PAT or field goal of the season?
Trying to figure this out is like being stuck in call center hell, and you're just trying to get to a customer representative, and you get every automated message. You're just like, representative. And that's what it's been like trying to get a kicker answer out of Ryan Day, representative, or Parker Fleming. And so I will say, I have no idea, Tom. I couldn't even venture to guess, because to this point, we know Jaden Fielding exists because we've seen him in action. I'm still not convinced that Parker Lewis exists. I've seen somebody in a jersey that has his number on it, but I don't know if that is a ruse or what. So I honestly have no idea on how that's going to shake out, but I won't be surprised if it's Fielding, just because of the experience he got last year, and Lewis has plenty of experience at USC. So I think they have two options. I just wonder, what is the hang up? Is it like a quarterback situation where they're just two really good kickers, or is it a situation where like somebody needs to get better?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we have not gotten to see much of the kicking this fall, even in the windows when we were at practice. So we don't have a whole lot to base it on, and it's been pretty tight-lipped, which is so weird to me, because that doesn't seem like something you're game planning around a lot as an opponent, and I guess we'll all find out together on Saturday. I don't know who's going to win, Tony, but I know one of them, by name, by reputation, can't lose. So we will all find out together on Saturday who that kicker is going to be. We might find out before then. We're going to be talking to Ryan Day on Tuesday, kind of kicking off our normal traditional game week. It is, in fact, an Ohio State football game week. Ryan Day interview on Tuesday, talking to some of the players on Wednesday night. We'll get our little lightning round with Ryan Day on Thursday, early afternoon, just to kind of do some last-minute check-ins on a few different storylines. And then we will be in Bloomington on Saturday for the first Ohio State football game of the year, Buckeyes and Hoosiers, kicking off at 3:30 on CBS. I heard that CBS college football music on on Saturday, and I think I saw a promo for Ohio State, Indiana, and I thought, man, this is going to be so weird to see Bloomington, Indiana, and the CBS college football music. I guess we're all gonna fight through it together. It'll be fine, and we'll be doing plenty of coverage in the lead up to that, including, if you're listening to this pretty much as soon as it drops, Tony and I are planning to do a very special live episode of Buckeye Weekly on Sunday night. We're going to do our Tale of the Tape show, Ohio State versus Michigan, going position group by position group. We're going to do it live because we want you guys yelling at us live in real time in the comments, so you'll have that to look forward to. You can find that on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Once it's up, you can obviously watch it there. You can also just listen to it on our podcast, Buckeye Weekly. That'll be we will be having a whole bunch of shows there this week. A whole bunch of shows live on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Planning to do our usual full post-game coverage after the game on Saturday. Should be fun. So make sure you are subscribed at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Make sure you are subscribed to all of our podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, just search Buckeye Huddle. You will find them all. Subscribe there. Make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and review as well, which will help other folks find those shows. And finally, you can find us on the mothership, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Really, really busy, fun time of year. If you have been thinking about it, if you're thinking, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence on joining one of these sites, try it for a month. It's like $12, something like that. It is less than the price of a pizza. Give it a shot at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Try it for a month, see if you like it. And if you do, great. You have a wonderful thing to ask your family and friends for as a Christmas present. Have them get you an annual membership in just a few months. So that will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.